And joining us now is retired Admiral Jan6committee, the former NATO Supreme Allied Commander. His new book is To Risk It All, 9 Conflicts and the Crucible of Decision. And here's a decision for you, Admiral, because I know you know how high the stakes are with Russia right now and Putin, and how bad the relationship is between Putin and the White House, clearly, in the U.S. and NATO. So what TASS, the official media in Russia, says is they want a trade for Viktor Bout. Viktor Bout, the notorious arms trader, an arms dealer with terrorists, 25-year sentence, jailed, convicted in the U.S. And that's very high price, some would argue, for the president to pay. But Cherelle Griner is telling people that they talked to Trevor Reed's family. They met with Trevor Reed's family, and they know the only way to get anything done, to get a trade done, which is what was done for Trevor Reed, is to go to the president. And when the president finally gave in after protests, after the family protested outside in front of the White House, they got to see the president, and that's how we got it done. So that's what this is all about. So you're the president. Would you try to trade for Paul Whelan, another detainee? There are 3 now, including Brittany. What would you do?
Well, let's start by my saying, boy, I'm glad I'm not the president. These are very, very hard decisions. Point one, we're seeing Putin essentially turn Russia into a terrorist state that takes hostages. I think that's pretty clear what's going on here. Secondly, heed the warnings of our State Department. Now is not a good time to be traveling to Russia for any reason. And frankly, I would foresee more of this. Thirdly, as you mentioned, there are a number of Americans who are held globally right now. And right there in Russia, of course, is Paul Whelan, a former Marine, also swept up under extremely questionable circumstances. In terms of what the president needs to do, point one, I would assure any family that the administration is 100% seized with this. And I say that from personal experience. When I was Commander U.S. Southern Command, we had 3 Americans held hostage by the terrorist group, the FARC. The whole administration, down to myself at Southern Command, woke up every morning thinking about how we could get them out. This has everybody's attention, as well it should. In terms of the actual negotiations going forward, I think the administration will look at all the options. They'll try and engage. They'll try and put pressure on Putin and his regime. At the same time, they might offer some additional carrots. We'll have to wait and see. Those are hard calls for Jake Sullivan and the president.
Admiral Stavridis, thank you so much.
Officials say the suspected gunman at the center of the deadly rampage at a July 4th celebration in Highland Park, Illinois, had been planning this attack for weeks.
He brought a high-powered rifle to this parade. He accessed the roof of a business via a fire escape ladder and began opening fire on the innocent Independence Day celebration goers.
Though Robert Crimo III has not yet been charged, investigators making clear he's the one they believe is responsible for this deadly mass shooting. According to multiple law enforcement sources, Crimo is cooperating with authorities and has made statements taking responsibility for the attack. Police say he purchased at least 5 firearms, including that AR-15 style high-powered rifle, legally in Illinois. They allege he fired more than 70 rounds into the crowd.
During the attack, Crimo was dressed in women's clothing, and investigators do believe he did this to conceal his facial tattoos and his identity and help him during the escape.
When the rampage was over, authorities say he dumped the rifle, got down from the roof, and walked among the same people he had just been shooting at.
He walked to his mother's home, who lived in the area, and he blended right in with everybody else as they were running around, almost as he was an innocent spectator as well.
Right now, authorities are still working to piece together a motive and a timeline, reviewing surveillance video of the attack. This doctor, who happened to be at the scene, jumping in to help save lives.
I started a couple IVs. We helped move people to a staging area. I didn't do anything heroic. I did what anyone who has who has medical training would try to do.
In all, 7 people were killed and more than 30 taken to the hospital. Officials say they found a second rifle in the suspect's car. This afternoon, a community left reeling. planning a series of vigils. Loved ones of the victims now planning funerals.
And the question is this: had enough, America? I sure hope so. If you've had enough, elect people who feel as we do. We need more gun safety.
And President Biden has ordered flags at half-staff in honor of the victims of this shooting. Biden saying today he's unsure if he'll travel here to Highland Park. Morgan Norwood, ABC News, Highland Park, Illinois.
There's no easy, safe way to the most eastern front lines of the Donbass. Russia has cut the highways, so soldiers, weapons, locals, and aid deliveries must all take the back roads. This Red Cross operation is to Siversk, the small town closest to the region's most intense fighting. The team unloads, and very quickly families arrive to load up. The noise of war. Close and loud. No one reacts. Natalia is collecting food for her husband and 2 children. She says they can't leave the town because they fear losing their house and the vegetable garden they rely on to survive. Only a fool isn't scared, she says, but there is no way out. We cannot leave our place. Lyubov arrives with her young children. She says they've stayed as the Russians approach because she doesn't want to risk being separated from her eldest daughter, who lives in a nearby village. She says, I called her once. She told me they're not leaving, then we lost connection. I don't even know if she's okay. Lyubov agrees to show us the home where she hopes they can safely wait out the war. It's a walk to the other side of town. But we soon realize that won't be possible. Their neighborhood is under fire. Incoming artillery from somewhere close. So close, you hear the artillery piece fire and the projectile's flight before impact. The shells fall within the same tight area. Again. And again. We saw all of this while only a little further to the east, Russian forces were claiming an important win, taking the city of Lysychansk.
Roll. Yep, come to us. Good to go? Yeah. The battle for Lysychansk is only a relatively short distance from here. This is likely to be the front line very soon, but already Russia's heavy weapons are falling among these people's homes in this town.
Follow it around.
Right here.
It's not safe to stay.
Oh, that was close. Hold on. Come on.
But all of these people remain scared, confused, hoping beyond reason the violence to come will pass them by.
The House committee investigating the January 6th attack on the Capitol is set to resume public hearings later this month.
That's right, but it appears the investigation may be expanding. Republican Congressman Adam Kinzinger says more potential witnesses have come forward with new information since the bombshell testimony of former Mark Meadows aide Cassidy Hutchinson. CBS News congressional correspondent Scott McFarland joins us now for more on all of this. Hi, Scott. So what do we know about the focus of the committee's next hearing?
It's likely to be midweek next week, and I'm told it'll focus on the role of far-right groups, the accused conspiracy groups, on the ground January 6th and in the weeks and months ahead of January 6th. Plotting, planning, raising money, and, according to the prosecutors, raising arms. The far-right groups have been a focus of the Justice Department almost from the start, and the committee has expressed some interest in these groups as well, mentioning them by name during some of the previous hearings, the Proud Boys, the Oath Keepers. The big question for this hearing, What connective tissue does this committee draw between the far-right groups and anybody else that's been publicly mentioned in these hearings? Do they connect these groups to the Trump inner circle? Do they connect these groups to the White House at all? That's the question that is the underpinning for the next hearing next week.
And Scott, over the weekend, Vice Chair Liz Cheney said the committee could make multiple criminal referrals to the Justice Department, including against former President Trump. Do we have any indication at all, Scott? Is the Department of Justice moving any closer to potential charges?
Well, Elaine, let's reflect upon that, because that's quite something. Over the weekend, members of this committee openly discussing something never done before in American history, making a formal referral for a formal prosecution of a former U.S. president. The question is not whether they'll make this referral, because the committee has already said they believe Donald Trump was part of a conspiracy to defraud the United States. The question is whether they would need to make a referral. We know the Justice Department has been closely monitoring the committee and its hearings and its work. What's more, we know the Justice Department has requested copies of the interview transcripts from this committee. They say they need those transcripts to help with some of their current prosecution. So we know both investigations are watching each other, not collaborating, not working together, but running parallel to each other. It's possible this committee makes a criminal referral to the Justice Department. It's not binding. It's just that. It's a recommendation. It's a referral. But also, it might be redundant because the Justice Department is closely, meticulously following what this committee finds.
And Scott, you've also learned that former White House advisor Steve Bannon could be throwing himself into the mix. What can you tell us about that?
Tanya, let's not forget about this case. Steve Bannon charged with contempt of Congress for defying the subpoenas of this January 6 committee. Here we are in July, and his trial is now set to begin this month. We know from the court filings and having spoken to Steve Bannon outside of the courthouse earlier in his proceedings, he would like to call as witnesses at his trial members of the January 6 Select Committee, potentially the U.S. House Speaker. We don't see anything definitive from the prosecutors or the court as to whether that be allowable or whether they could push forward with such an idea, but it raises the prospect of a circus-like atmosphere at the trial of Steve Bannon, which will happen amid the January 6 committee investigation, and it will happen within eyesight of the U.S. Capitol at the federal courthouse in Washington, D.C., which happens to sit on Capitol Hill.
All right. Well, we'll all be watching. Scott MacFarlane from Capitol Hill, thank you so much.